Welcome, guys, to a new series called The Briefcase The Barn. It's me and Gary Baars here. Don't know how often exactly we're going to do this or how long the podcast is going to be. We're thinking maybe every week, maybe every other week. I'm sure it's not going to be exactly lined up because me and Gary are trying to line up schedules and a little bit cuckoo. So, so that's what it's going to be. So we're just going to, I'll just ask Gary some questions because you guys probably don't know him as much as me on this show. Maybe not. I guess there's not that much of me that gets talked about on the other podcasts, but who's Gary Baars?
Maybe through this, people will get to know you better too. I'm an old man. Just turned 40. Have 5 adopted children, and married to Marie. She's a rock star, wonderful lady. And our oldest son is 10, and our youngest 2 kids are 4. And it's been quite a journey. We're also foster parents. So we have one little foster boy right now who we've had living with us for a year. I don't know how long that's going to carry on for. You never do. And so that's what we're doing right now. And then I am entrepreneurial. So I have a couple different businesses, T&T Hay and Cattle Sales. A lot of people know that business. I'm a realtor. I run an auction company with my cousin Johnny. It's like farm equipment, etc. And
it's called Beekman Auctions.
Beekman Auctions, yeah. We started it in 2018, and my wife picked the name. It's Johnny and I's mother's maiden name. It's Beekman. That's where it came from. And we're kindred spirits in a lot of ways. And then I have a dairy farm as well. So it was always my dream to start dairy farming. And in 2011, I started farming with 13 cows, and I farm out in Abbotsford right now at Marie's family farm, basically.
And you're an elder.
And I'm an elder. I never announce that.
That's why I'm here.
Never announce that publicly. That's so funny.
Okay, so you're a busy guy. And we know each other through, I reached out to you, when was it?
2 years ago?
Yeah, it was a fall or spring of 2022, I think it was. So I reached out to Gary because Nicole and I were separated. I was in a super bad spot. And I was like, I heard of Gary Baars. I knew he used to drink way too much and was an alcoholic, and now he was an elder. So I was like, okay, that's someone who's messed up like me. He'll probably understand a little bit where I'm at. Let me reach out to him. And so Gary got me connected with a program called Freedom Session that I started that year. Quit halfway, didn't want to do it, and did it again the following year and Gary was the leader of my group. So that's how I got to know him. And it's been fun.
Yeah, it's I've been doing it since 2016, and basically started doing it for the same reasons you did. Pretty messed up. Marriage was in a bad spot. Not being honest with my wife. Watching pornography, doing all kinds of crap I shouldn't be doing. Just not being fully transparent. Feeling like a total fraud. Going to church on Sunday morning, knowing that I just knew better. I was raised well and knew the truth, and just was stuck in a vicious cycle of addiction. And the devil loves secrets. He loves stuff hidden. Secrets are the ticket. So when things are brought to light, they can eventually be dealt with. But in my case, it took my wife really calling me out. And I was already a week behind. Freedom Sessions had already started. I didn't know too much about it, but I'd seen the promo video at our church. And a week later, my wife we had it out, and I think it was in 2016, maybe 2017, I forget now. But anyways.
Yeah, and just so everyone listening, Freedom Sessions is a 28-week program. And how would you describe it?
Oh, I don't even like the term program. Discipleship healing journey would probably be more accurate, but it's definitely is.
I would call it just.
Would you call it a program?
You want to be happier and feel better? You should probably do it.
Or even just most people need it, right? I mean, I always say, like, if there's somebody in your life that you don't talk to in your family, if there's any secrets that you have from your spouse, big indicator you need it. If you feel tension in relationships with people, you need it. And most of us have some tension in some relationships.
If you're always going out of the bottle to feel better.
Yeah. Or if you're always on your phone, always in the reel section on Instagram.
That's not me. I have a
Not
lockbox.
me either, but some other people I really care about.
It definitely is a tendency to everyone.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why I have that keep blowing that lockbox up on my story, because I think it's smart. Anyways, okay, so it's a 28-week program.
Yeah.
But you joined in 2016.
Yeah. And I since then, by the grace of God,
what did it do for you? Like, it just, how did it fix the?
I mean, I no longer went on the internet and looked at stuff I shouldn't be looking at.
How?
How?
What was
What's
the
the
process?
journey? I mean, it is 12 steps. So those that are familiar with Alcoholics Anonymous would have heard of the 12 steps, but it's not the 12 steps. I mean, it's completely Christ-centered, and the guy who teaches it's Ken Dick, and he's a godly man and a great teacher and very gifted, and it's just beautiful teaching. And so I don't know how to describe it really accurately in that sense of kind of what it does, but it basically makes you take, all the, and I don't like going into too much detail.
Okay, then hold it. Just take it.
Just take it. Yeah, you start explaining the thing, and people are, especially if you're someone who needs it, you're for sure looking for an excuse not to take it, right? Yeah. I mean, that's just pretty typical. One of my favorite sayings is we have an intro night always, and I always tell people, those that quit needed it the most. I mean, as a general rule, and that's just, it goes without saying. You kind of get to know people.
First year,
Bingo, Exhibit A. But yeah, it's just because it's hard, right? It is hard. It's hard to get better.
Yeah.
The only thing harder is staying sick. But I mean, unfortunately, it's the devil loves it when we stay sick. He loves it when we're doing the wrong things and we have secrets in our life. And yeah, I've had a lot of that over the years.
One of the things in coaching that I often talk about with the guys I work with is, what do you want? What do you actually want? And I think we often think of that in terms of short term rather than long term. And so, like 20 years from now, what do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to be? And I think if everyone describes that in a very positive way: a good relationship with your kids, well off, good marriage, whatever, all those things, different ways. So if you want that, what does that mean for the next hour or the next day? Because it's just super small amounts every single day that make you get to that spot. It's not one big thing. Like, it's just consistency every single day. What do you want? But it's easy to forget it right in the moment. It's easy to forget at 8 o'clock at night after you had a super long day and you're stressed out, not to have one too many wobbly pops. But it's, I think, in those moments where you have to like train your brain to be like, hey, what do I want? What do I actually want here? Because we actually generally want good things or good feelings at the end of the day. But in that, we sabotage ourselves in the short term.
It's interesting too, even for myself, and I don't know how it's been for you, but like my journey has been now where, okay, so you eradicate a lot of the really obvious, blatantly bad things, but that doesn't mean you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
In my case, it's been like, hey, all of a sudden, I'm doing a lot of good things, or trying to anyways. And it's like, well, no, maybe God doesn't want me out 5-6 nights a week when I got 6 kids at home. And, so that's been my challenge, because you do not get the accolades at home that you will get when you go help other people. Right. And so, I mean, it's embarrassing for me to say it, but it's been like, hey, no, I need to be spending that time. And I have a lot of strong guys such as yourself and others that are like, hey, they're not afraid to call me on it and say, hey, what are you doing to look after your family? And many guys from church. So I'm thankful for that. But yeah, it's like, the little thing, it's hard to be disciplined in the little things. And if it's not one area, it's another.
Yeah. I also think it's society, and I think also this is very much in the church circles as well. It's really easy to talk about what we don't want, or what's bad, or what's not good. Like, you look at politicians and what they say, they usually talk about what they don't want to do and what they're not going to do and how the other guy is bad, and they talk about all the negatives. And you look at like the news,
rather than like a concrete plan on actually
what they do instead.
Or they go really grandiose, but never actually articulate specific steps how they're going to get there. Yeah.
Or the good things. So growing up, we often hear from our parents what's bad, but we don't necessarily hear what's good. So we get told, don't eat with your hands, but we don't get told as much, eat with your knife and fork. And so what's emphasized constantly are the negatives and not the positives. You don't really know what to do. I think we have to often, to show the positive side of these things, like what to go do instead.
The other side of the equation.
Instead of saying to kids, don't drink, like go do good, like, and be specific about
what that looks like. Yeah.
Or
provide it even. I mean, kids probably
they need to see it in you.
Yeah.
To really do it, but
Don't be angry. I'm a raging lunatic.
I know. Last week I was talking to Malachi. He's 7, and I'm like, "How do you think our relationship's going lately?" And he's like,
Like him and you? You asked how you knew you were doing it.
He came downstairs like 9:00 at night. Couldn't sleep. So we were having, I don't know, we were eating food together or something like that. It wasn't cereal like you, but and so I asked him, how's our relationship going? He's like, it's not very good. And I'm like, why not? He's like, you're always talking about money. I'm like, oh, you're always worried about money or something like that. And I'm like, oh. And he's like, yeah, you just like, don't worry about it. And like, worrying doesn't help you. He goes like, worrying doesn't help you. I'm like, where'd you get that from? He's like, you taught me.
Worrying doesn't
He goes,
help.
yeah, I'm learning coaching. But he's observing, right?
He's watching. He is watching.
He's watching. So he was calling me out. And
Yeah.
then I explained to him iron sharpens iron and how that works. But
is he ready to be iron? Wait, is
well,
iron?
I explained the example to him, and he said afterwards, he's like, oh, so I was sharpening you?
Oh man.
So what's it on the kids side, adopted kids? How did that?
Yeah, so that in of itself has been a real journey in our life. I mean, most people don't know this, but when I was in my early 20s, I was a foster dad, single foster dad. Bizarre experience, probably 22, 23 years old. And
you had just become sober.
Yeah,
before
3
that.
years before that or something. I was stark raving sober. Yeah. Total workaholic, a lot of other things going on. Anyways, yeah, a lot of gambling. Used to play a lot of poker, casino. Banned myself from the casino at one point in BC. So then I would drive across the border and go play down in the US at night. Crazy. Anyways, yeah. So around that time, and I don't know exactly when it was, but it was in that time frame in my early 20s. I had a friend from AA, because I went to AA when I quit drinking when I was 19. Probably shouldn't have said that. I don't normally announce that I went to AA, but anyways, it's called Alcoholics Anonymous for a reason, and not because, by the way, not because I'm ashamed that I went to AA, but more because to protect the name of AA. So when people go off the rails and drink, it's not healthy if some public figure who is super popular in our culture, I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. I'm nobody. But, if there's some celebrity, they're announcing that they went to AA, then they fall off the wagon, they start drinking and go off the rails.
Oh, really?
It just makes AA
That's
look
actually
bad.
a rule?
That's why
AA has?
it's totally a rule.
Oh.
Yeah. Do not publicly talk about the fact that you go to AA.
Okay, so we don't know
No.
if you actually went or not.
We do not know. And you're totally allowed to tell people you went to AA. It's a public thing. Like it's,
Oh, okay, you're a
obviously
public figure.
You would just be like, hey, you're not announcing it. You're not putting it in newsprint, right? I mean,
Yeah, so when you stop saying it, I'll know that you think quite highly of yourself.
when more than 6 people watch this, we'll edit it
Okay.
out. That's where I'm going with this. But anyways, started fostering because a guy from AA who I really respected fostered. And so I signed up to be a foster dad, and I had a boy live with me. And
In your early 20s.
yeah, he was 12.
Wow.
So he was only 10 years younger than me. And I had a buddy of mine stayed at my house at night because I was milking nights. I was kind of milking like 11. I did a lot of relief milking in my early 20s in Chilliwack.
Yeah.
Milked from 11 to 1, and then I milked another job from 3 to 5, and then I ended up unloading hay all day by hand because I used to unload hay every day, semi-loads of hay, small bales. And I basically didn't sleep. It wasn't healthy. And I think 3 or 4 months in, I don't know how long, I went to the ministry that was dealing with the situation and said, hey, I can't carry on like this. So the boy was removed from my home. And that was the end of that fostering experience. It was pretty traumatic for me. And it was traumatic, obviously, for him. It was really sad. It was something that I carried a lot of guilt for a lot of years. And had to ask for forgiveness for that. I just felt like I caused one more wound in this young boy's life. Great kid. Very interesting, as an aside, in the last year, I don't know if I told you this already, but he reached out to me on Facebook. I'd been kind of praying about it. I was like, wow. So I have been dialoguing with this guy, and of course he's a grown man now because he's 10 years younger than me. So it's pretty cool and very encouraging and very forgiving. And I've been able to say sorry, obviously, in
You guys
person.
met up?
No, he lives quite far north, northern
right.
BC, but we've been chatting on Facebook.
Very
He
cool.
calls me on Facebook. So that's really cool, really special. And so that's back when I was 23. And then Marie and I get married. I'm 27, and we can't have kids. And super hard on our marriage. did some level of fertility treatments, IUI, not in vitro, just this thing before that. Won't get into more description because I get in trouble, right? If I start talking, as soon as I start comparing it to like breeding cows, I get in trouble, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
But I'm a farmer, and so everything gets back to the barn.
The briefcase in the barn.
Briefcase in the barn. But anyways, I digress. So at that point, we're trying to have kids, can't have kids, and then I had always probably felt the call, and my wife could say yes or no, but I think I was always kind of quickly leaning towards, hey, we should maybe adopt or at least look into it or foster. And it took me quite a while to get there. But yeah, over time, she did fully come there, obviously, to that conclusion, probably about 3 years in. And we started working on it, and we signed up to adopt privately in BC, which is quite a process. And you're basically, as a general rule, and of course, everything, you don't want to be careful with blanket statements, but as a general rule, you get on a list and people pick you, and they pick you from a book. So if a lady of some age, whatever age, people always think, oh, it's a young mom. No, it's like, it's all walks of life and all different reasons, and everybody has a reason, and a lot of them are very valid reasons. In our culture, nobody thinks that way because we're Dutch, and we just pull up our bootstraps. We do things. We have good family. We have great church community. So it's very easy to be judgmental when you're not in that spot. But I mean, the story.
No one wants to put their kid up for adoption.
No, and even I guess, it's just not an easy thing to do.
If there's shame around it, and you don't like it, and you want to hide it, then it's something you probably don't want to do. But you're in a position where you feel like you have to.
Yeah. Or maybe even just. And I don't want to.
Not to say there's not people.
I'm not saying a specific example, but I'm just saying there are couples that are like, hey, we're just not in a spot to look at this kid, or we're just, like somebody could give this kid, somebody could give this child a better life or whatever, or if they think a better life. I mean, it's complicated. Kids need their parents, and I would argue they even need their bio parents. So on that, our kids, as many as can, have relationships with their birth parents, and it's a beautiful thing. And
how many kids in BC, like just a Western country, province, or in Canada, are being put up for adoption?
Like privately? Because it's a very big difference. So like we adopted our first son privately, and then our second daughter, Hannah, we adopted from Japan privately, which is another very unique experience.
Kids being put up for adoption in Canada.
As infants?
Or
because it's different, because our other kids were adopted through the ministry, and that's not by choice, right? I mean, those are situations where these kids are in foster homes. Okay. We're fostering, and their parents are struggling, and eventually it's just obvious that they're not returning home to their birth parents. And then at that point,
I guess there's two. Well, you have the kids that are being taken from their homes, and being put into foster homes.
Yes,
that might go back. But I'm wondering about the families that are saying, we want someone to adopt.
How many is that?
Yeah,
it's not a large amount.
But like,
I don't want to say the number because I'd say the wrong number, but it's not a large amount. Like on the list, I want to say in BC it might be 20 to 50 a year, and I could be wrong.
Okay, so it's super low. I heard a presentation last week about Safe Families.
Yeah, one of my favorite organizations.
Well, yeah, I was blown away by it, but hopefully get that lady on the show.
Okay.
But she said in her presentation there was almost 2 million Canadians living in poverty. Mm-hmm. Right now.
Yeah. So I guess the thing, and
because I'm assuming a lot
kids
of
can have a great life in poverty.
Yeah, fair.
Like, and I go back to my statement earlier, I think, and that this is where like, we don't have a savior complex in our house. Like, our house, like, me, like,
yeah.
There's no saving happening from dad here. Right. Like, I'm a mediocre father probably at best. So I guess what I mean by that is like, even if I look at our kids, like their parents love them, and they just were not in a state. And so it's heavy, it's hard, but it's also beautiful. And it's been amazing for our family. Our kids understand it. We talk about it. I mean, obviously, even if you look at the Bible, there's a lot of comparables. There's, we're adopted, right? Thankfully.
We definitely needed that.
Savage. Yeah, I mean, we're just similar to our kids. Will need to be adopted, right?
Yeah.
On that front.
Well, everyone does. That's the point.
Everybody does. That is the point. So I think, it's something that's talked about a lot in our home, and for us, it was like a journey we've been on, and we don't have the answers. Sometimes I think, oh man, have we prayed about it enough? Have we talked about it enough? Have we? But at the end of the day, we're just trying to do the right thing, and we're being challenged. And the beautiful thing is, and you know, when you're in a tight spot in life or you're struggling, you realize how beautiful people are. Like we've had it is literally a village. And you talk about safe families, like safe families is basically keeping, correct me if I'm wrong, you just met with them, but they're basically keeping kids out of foster care. That is the goal, right?
Before they need to go into foster, like give them a hand.
Yeah. And people don't understand this, but if you called the Ministry of Children and Families today and you were a struggling person with your children, single mom or dad, and you're, you know, really struggling, like unless you are abusing or brutally neglecting your kids, they are not taking your kids away, and they can hardly help you. They don't really have the reason. Like they're there, they're firefighters, right? I mean, when there's a problem, they step in to protect kids. So Safe Families does it in a loving way, and it'd be beautiful if you got Jen Gamache or somebody from there on. But they have teams of people from across the Lower Mainland, from all different churches that are helping, and we're involved in that as well, and in little ways that we can be. And so in our house, it's like we're all adopted. All the kids are adopted. I always think, you know, the Lord, I don't know if he has a sense of humor. I think he does, but he's given us humor anyways. And it's like, hey, are all of a sudden we going to have a baby yet? Like that would be bizarre, right? But
that would be bizarre.
Or not.
It's happened before.
Or not. It's happened before.
So,
but it might not happen. I could say a note to that too, right? Like, you know, this is another thing, you know, how it is when people like if somebody can't have kids, like the less you say is better as a general rule.
Yeah, I believe that.
I mean, I'll just leave it.
But what I do know, I think this is true. Do ask about it and listen.
Yeah. Don't make it awkward. Don't be like, well, we can't talk about it. But don't start giving advice. Don't say pithy sayings like, you know, if you just relax, you'll get pregnant.
Yeah, people say crazy things.
People say crazy, and the reason they do, and I've always told my wife this. Most people, well, first of all, people do not like being uncomfortable. Like you and I like being uncomfortable, and we'll talk about awkward things, right?
Yeah.
But most people don't. They just want problems to go away. It's the same reason where if you're in the church lobby or at some event and you ask someone how they were doing, you know, and they started telling you how they were doing and it was horrible, most people would just be like, short circuiting.
It's really fun at the grocery store to do that when they ask you like, how's your day today, sir? Beep.
It is,
and they're like, and you start unloading.
She won't ask the next 6
No,
people.
she never asks again. They don't actually
Or
care.
he won't.
This is a cultural thing too, though. I have family from Holland that comes over here, and we'll be at the grocery store together buying some stuff. And the lady will ask me, how's your day today? Good. I'm like, yours good. And move on. And they're like, what? Why did you ask?
That was just BS.
They're like, why'd you ask? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, do you care about her day?
No.
I'm like, I guess not really. She's like, then why'd you ask? And I'm like, huh? I'm like, what do you guys do? They're like, we just say hi.
But you and I, we care a little bit. Or
that's fair.
I would say that I'll test myself, and when I ask next time, I'll be like, do I actually care about this person?
I think it has to be intentional. We say that phrase just to open almost every conversation.
We do every even today on the phone. Random people.
Yeah,
it's the banker.
Yeah, yeah. We should care.
He cares that I'm paying back.
I do. I have a friend, Peter Hedstrom. I met him through Desire and God Ministries, John Piper's ministry. And they've been super good to me and Nicole the last 3-4 years, and really walked with us, and we're there when Grace died. But this guy is like, when he walks around and he meets somebody, like if it's the waitress at like you're out for lunch or at the grocery store or whatever it is, and he looks you in the eye and he sees you and he asks for your name and he remembers, and like he actually cares. Like he's just like, it is wild. Like I don't have that kind of energy at all, but I think more of like that kind of heart
or focus.
Yeah, focus.
To be really focused.
Yeah.
I don't think you and I are that focused. I'm not that focused. I'll speak for myself. Yeah, hyper focused sometimes on really weird things.
Fair enough. Yeah, I might put that under focus.
Hyper focused. Yeah. So.
Okay. So you got lots of adopted kids, and
how do you view people that have adopted kids?
Well, actually, that's a good question, because I was going to say, I asked you a couple months ago. I thought to myself, how do I know I'm not supposed to adopt kids or do foster care? Mm-hmm. I never even crossed my mind before. Mm-hmm.
Most people assume they're not supposed to, and that's not accurate. And most people assume that people have adopted or fostering are special people, and that's not true. That really kindles my wife's. I'm speaking for my wife now, which is dangerous, but
that is dangerous.
It kindles my wrath. Not as much, because I can see why people do it, say it.
But
when they say things like good for you, they say good for you. Or they say, oh, wow, I could never do that. I'm like, I can't do it either. Yeah. Like, nobody could do it. Like, things that are hard, like you said earlier, it's just little things, little steps, and you get a lot of help.
Okay, but there is a lot of people that just don't even consider it or think about it.
Is that true?
I didn't.
Never? Not once?
Okay, no, that's not true. Like maybe like once a year, like briefly, but it's not
Did
like
your wife think about it?
small amount. But I mean, we were so busy with all the other things, and it wasn't like,
which is fair.
and you almost know. I mean, I haven't known you for longer than 2 or 3 years, really. So I didn't really like almost no one in our church adopted, almost no one in our church fostered. I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that that's like reality. So what I saw around me wasn't people doing it. So
yeah,
how would you say if someone's listening and there's like how do not know?
Well, you investigate. So practically you would investigate, right? And see what it looks like, see if it is a fit. And also, yeah, you'd pray about it and you'd seek wise counsel, just like you would with anything that you might feel like you're called to do. And to be fair, to some extent, it's a calling. And, I had a talk with a guy from our church. There's quite a few people who foster there at Central and have adopted for sure, but even quite a few foster parents. And, the guy was saying, well, like, most people aren't cut out for it anyways. But, and to some extent for certain children, that may be true. But like, I think it's fair to say, and I mean, your kids are relatively young, but just looking back at my childhood and how I was as a kid, which was horrible, like, I'm sure my parents didn't feel cut out to parent me either at times, right? I may have punted out of the house, and deservedly so.
It's hard work.
It's hard work, and there's no manual, and and every child's different. And the reality is that some people are amazing parents, and their kids, end up in jail like me, and parents are pretty easygoing, and their kids just do really well. So, I mean, and I think the point of that is that nobody gets to take credit for any of it as parents. That's, and so it's the same thing for fostering and adopting. I think that.
Wait. You can't take any credit as a parent?
I would want to be really careful taking credit. You don't want to own the shortcomings. You don't need to take the credit. I mean,
that's fair. Yeah.
By the grace of God, there go I. And I think that back to the adopting thing, like,
but I guess the reason I think we should do our best to be.
Yeah, but we should do our best at everything.
Yeah, okay, but it's not a lot.
But the outcome is irrelevant. It's about being faithful, and it's about doing the right thing.
Yeah, being faithful. That's right.
Just do the right thing.
Go do the right thing.
Yeah,
and then leave the rest.
And I think it's back to freedom sessions. It's like, you lead a group like I do. Well, how the group turns out, I mean, obviously I could do a better job. I've admitted my shortcomings to you, but as a general rule, you don't wear how the people do in the group. Yeah. I mean, that's their journey, and we don't even know. Maybe I think that's where it's like you talk about God's plan for people's life, for the sovereignty of God. It's like, hey, He knows.
But it's tempting. I mean, it's interesting you say this.
Yeah, because we're on the human being tour, and we only see it at our 6 foot level, right? Yeah. Like we don't see everything in the future.
But when someone talks about adoption and says, "Oh, I could never do that," "Oh, that must be really hard," that's like whatever. Yeah. We're actually okay with working really hard. Like our community is okay with working super, super hard, but it's usually on things that make them feel good or benefit them. Those are the stuff that we work really hard at. We're not actually that hard of workers when it comes to the things that.
Well, not emotional stuff.
Not emotional stuff, but also like something like this, like adopting. Like we all have the horsepower to do these things if we have the horsepower to work 70 hours a week on our own business.
So Dutch people even, and we're doing blanket statements, which is so fair, but like in our, where we grew up anyways, or, if you went to that kind of culture, like super helpful, very, like even like really proud, but don't want to step too much out of their own comfort zone. Right. And now that is totally changing right now. But I would say like, especially when we were growing up, or like if you go back to the 90s, let's say, like it was just very closed. Right. And what we do is messy. And you're meeting people that you normally wouldn't hang out with, and you're doing things you wouldn't normally do. But that's a beautiful thing. And then we get sharpened and we get challenged. And I think that I always, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but I always feel in my heart, like whether it be adopting or anything awkward or challenging or picking up a hitchhiker or whatever, if I'm not doing it, who is? And that's who is. Like, obviously, I'm expecting someone else to do it. So anytime you say no to something, and granted, some things we're not supposed to do. And I think that's been my challenge. It's like, hey, I don't have to do everything. My wife would say, like, there's, just do what you're called to do, and that's it. And so we've been called to adopt. It's been a beautiful thing for our family, and we've seen it in other people that we just respect so much, right? Like their character and who they are. And it's just an amazing thing. You just think yeah, it's messy and it is hard, but all things that are amazing are hard. That's just the way life is. So, and
it's all hard work. Like if you want to have a good business or a good career, it's hard work. But also, if you want to have a good marriage, it's hard work. Is it hard? I would say it is. I would say it is. If you want to be really good and like own your shit, and yeah, you gotta grind.
Try harder.
But it pays off. The hard work does pay off. But I think it's also in other areas. Like you want a good relationship with your kids, it's hard work. Hard work is uncomfortable.
Hard to focus. Yeah.
Yeah, and those things like that. But like I think it's more about like talking about again, what do you want? If you actually want a good relationship with your kids, well, do you want it more than your work? Like, what do you want more?
Yeah.
Because you're going to get what you want. You're going to get where you put the time in. Wherever you're putting the time in, you're going to get more of that.
Yeah, and that's probably, I mean, we've had sermons on it, but I mean, that's really what you tell what is important, right? You look at two things. You look at where your time's spent and you look at where your money goes, right? And if you look at someone's bank account and you look at their calendar, you can basically see what's important to them, right? Yeah. And so when I say, hey, I'm a family man and I care about my wife and kids and my whole calendar's full of helping others or working and making money, well, yeah, it's probably not lining up. So that's been the real conviction in the last year anyways, but.
We all have this problem with our phones, TV, snacks. We want to put away and we don't always have the self-control. For me, it's especially my phone. I'm distracted, but I want to be with my kids. And so I came across this product from Kitchen Safe. It's called a lockbox, and it's been a huge lifesaver for me. How it works is I'll just grab my phone, put it in here, TV remote, maybe it's something else, maybe it's like snacks, throw those in here. Put the lid on, then I can set it to however many hours I want. But I can just set the amount of time on here by just turning this wheel, hit it down, gives me 5 seconds to change my mind. But after that, it locks, and then you can't get it out anymore. Really love it. If you want one, there's a link in the description of my Instagram, or you can get there through my website, furiouslykurious.co. Super great product, highly recommend it. Let me know what you think. Okay, so we're doing this, now you know who Gary is a little bit more. I'm sure more will come out if when we keep doing this. But I want to talk a little bit about the topics, the type of topics we can cover in this new series. So you said at the start, before we started recording, what you like talking about, which was what?
Oh, anything to do with like the ministry stuff that we've talked about, whether it be save families or adopting or, yeah, I mean, that type of stuff. I like economics. Like I'm weird. I read macroeconomics. I listen to lots of podcasts about it.
What's the last macroeconomics thing that you learned?
I listen to stuff like, podcasts like the Looney Hour, and I learn about, monetary policy, and I like listen, I'll read, I'll just read financial statements from companies and stuff like that. I'm not super knowledgeable, but of course, the more you read, the more you learn.
Yeah.
And I feel like in my life, you don't get to be a prophet with economics, but you can see general trends. You can see, and even now we're heading into hard times, and it's like, hey, we've had a long run of, some prosperity with, and some people wouldn't feel that way, but as a general rule, right?
Propped up prosperity by the printing of money, low interest rates, and now the chickens have finally come home to roost, and central banks are, and there again, I mean, now we've really veered off into a different topic talking about central banks from adopting kids, but. Well, the rest of the show, different topics.
Those types of things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and even real estate. Like I love real estate. I love buying and selling real estate. I've owned a lot of real estate in different provinces. And, but it's interesting because, it's like you said earlier, it doesn't really matter, like your sign says, he is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Jim Elliot. Great saying.
It's out of frame. The guy was a beauty.
That was the fellow who went to be a missionary in a foreign country and the people killed him, right?
Yeah, his first day there.
And then his wife went back, I think.
His wife went back and
to preach to those people.
And they became Christians. Yeah.
Okay, I think I started reading a book by her. Is it Elizabeth Elliot?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She just died a couple of years ago.
Okay. Wow.
But yeah, he gave everything, the things that didn't matter, and gained what he could never lose.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I think that's the thing that will, I'm excited to do on this series of the podcast as we talk through different topics, if it's microeconomics or politics or whatever those things it is. It's like the foundation. The foundation is our faith in Christ, or it should be. I don't know if it always is. Often always isn't, but it's not a. Someone asked me the other day, what does it mean to be a Christian coach? And I'm like, I'm not really a Christian coach. I'm just a coach.
That's a Christian. Yeah.
That's a Christian. I have a belief set of what I operate on. I have a manual that I try to do the world through.
So how do you feel in your circle when you're talking to random people, probably a lot of them not Christians? Like, how do you feel about telling people you're a Christian, or even just in general, even in our community, just, hey, I'm a Christian? Like, obviously we shouldn't be secretive about our faith, but I always, often I get into the headspace of like, hey, I know my shortcomings, right? I'm not that I'm totally, I could be way more self-aware, but like through by ironing, sharpening iron, right? Like, I'm aware of kind of, some of my shortcomings. Like, how do you deal with that? Where it's like, hey, do you ever have it where you're like me and I'm like, well, yeah, I don't really want to talk too loudly about it. Not that I'm like thinking I'm going to be a real shyster or something, but I'm just so sensitive to the fact of like, hey, I'm a witness, and like, man, am I a bad witness? Like, do you have that or not? Not too.
Yeah. Well, growing up, I had a ton of shame around it.
Okay.
Because what I saw around me was people had shame around it. Like the people that I was around growing up and the community I was around, never really engaged publicly about Christianity with the public. We would talk about it in the church setting, but we'd never talk about it in the public setting. And so I naturally saw that. So I was uncomfortable with it. I felt shame around it. There was nothing so I grew up that way. And then when I, before I was a Christian, before 21, I didn't really care about it, didn't talk about it that much. When I became a Christian, I talked about it a lot more, but then I started, and I still have a lot of sin in my life, a lot of things I shouldn't have been doing. And so then you feel like a fraud. And then you feel a ton of resistance to talk about it, because, you're full of shit. You're living a double life. And then you really don't start talking about it, which I also think Satan uses because everyone still sins.
Everybody sins, yeah.
And the whole point of Christianity is not that we're good, it's that we're bad. And that's why we need Jesus. We need to be forgiven.
Yeah.
It's not a proclamation you're a good guy. It's a proclamation you're a bad guy in need of a big savior.
Yeah. I mean, we did grow up in a culture, I guess, where a lot of it is still outward judging, right? Like just a lot of it is, and maybe I'm still dealing with that where it's just like, hey, I know what people around me are kind of looking for any little sign of, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like,
but now, so how I have it now, like with the coaching company I have and stuff like that, I have more of an online presence than ever. And that'll only keep going. Like I'm just going to probably putting more and more content out. And, I do think about it. I'm just like, what if, I know my past, I know how capable I am of doing things I shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And so I don't trust myself necessarily to be like, oh, I'm never going to I'm always going to be perfect for the rest of my life now. Like, I'm just like, I'm not. So I guess that's in the back of my mind a little bit, but I often think that
which I think is healthy. I think any man that thinks he's beyond ever doing anything is dangerous. Like I think everybody needs to be held accountable. I'd be very skeptical of any guy that said nobody's ever holding him accountable. I just don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, that's right.
Depending on the personality, obviously some people are way more prone to, some people just do the right thing because they're just wired that way and they do a lot. I talked to
a guy today about it actually, and I'm like, how's your walk with God going? And he's like, not very good. And I'm like, he wasn't talking to people. And he wasn't spending time in his word and not really praying much. But especially wasn't talking to people. Because if you're telling someone every week you're cold because you're not doing certain things.
And it's not even because they're going to call you to account. It's literally you talk yourself out of it. It's no different than when you go to advice on a lot of things. It's amazing. Most people don't have to say much. And you just talking out loud. You're like, start hearing yourself. And you're like, well, that is a pretty crazy idea.
I mean, that's coaching. I never give my opinion. I
find that hard to believe.
Rarely. I try very hard not giving opinion. You get the most when the person explains themselves what they want to go do.
And then you just empower them to do that.
Yeah.
Do they have the aha moment or do you have to provide it?
No. If you provide the aha moment, it's not an aha moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's just asking questions.
Yeah. Digging.
Getting clarity, yeah.
Yeah, getting clarity.
But it's getting them where they want to go, right? Like if it's me getting them,
because obviously anybody that signs up for coaching or they're essentially wanting something to change, they're wanting more from themselves, they're expecting their behavior they want their behavior to change, or they just want their life to be somewhat better. Is it mostly business or is it just personal or a bit of both? Or?
Yeah, so I've coached only business owners so far and one NHL player. It's usually business because I just love business and have experience in it. But if you're dealing with someone's business, you're also dealing with their life, right? They're all intertwined.
They are intertwined.
And so,
show me a guy that's struggling at home with his wife, and I'll tell you that's someone that watch out for them in business.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's like it's all intertwined. But yeah, it's usually, it's not even necessarily that something's going bad. Often things can just be way better. Like if you're constantly, consistently getting stressed out about something, like what if that wasn't there? Like that would be a win, right?
Freedom.
Yeah. So like there's just really practical things often that you can just get out of the way to make your life better. Like apart from spirituality and like
Yeah.
one of my clients said to me a couple of weeks ago, he's not a Christian. He's like, I'm really happy that you haven't brought that into our coaching calls. And I'm like,
Do you feel you can really help someone then even without that?
yeah.
You do. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a doctor fixing your broken arm, right? Like if you go to the hospital because you broke your arm, you want him to fix your arm. You don't want him to start like preaching to you about what he believes. And so I see coaching very much like apart when I'm not coaching and I'm just a friend. Yeah, then I'll give my opinion. Then I'll engage and then I'll like that'll be different. But just in the coaching setting, it's understanding their goals and what's standing in the way, and helping move those things.
Okay. Interesting.
So, yeah, consultants have all the answers. Coaches have all the questions.
Yeah. Answer the question with another question. Sounds like a politician.
That's fair. Probably also helped I've been in therapy since I was 9.
Not enough therapy.
Okay. I think that is, what are we at? 43 minutes here. Yeah, I think that's it. Wrap it up. More to come. If you have certain topics you want us to talk about or cover, shoot me a message or Gary a message if you know him. But yeah, that's it. That's all. The briefcase and the barn.
Thanks, Kyle.